This is the 8th day of June 2011, and we're interviewing Franklin C. Gluckler. Frank, give us an idea of the days you went into the service and the branch of service.
I entered into the Air Force August 20th, 1943, and I was discharged on November 2nd, 1945.
Okay. You mentioned before, which I understand, but for the audience, you were a draft dodger enlistee. What does that mean?
I was a draft dodger, yes. I enlisted before I was drafted. I had found out my mother was quite an active person, and in fact she was a female executive before her time. And she saw in the paper somewhere in the summer of '43, knowing that the draft board was breathing its hot breath down my neck, she saw in the newspaper an article that said, in fact, I got a copy of it here, that says, join the Air Force and get to fly. And flying was a great idea. Yeah. It was better than walking on the ground. So I did, and I went into the Air Force.
Okay. And you gave us the dates, so that would be during World War II.
Oh, yes.
And prior to going to the service, where did you live?
I lived in Hackensack. Yeah.
Okay.
I was born in Hackensack Hospital, and I lived in Hackensack for all my life until I moved to Hillsdale. And, well, okay, I'll anticipate your next question. In the summer of 1942, I only have to approximate that because I wasn't part of the General Staff of the United States Army. They planned on making and having replacements for the Air Force to take care of the casualties that they anticipated in World War I. And they...
World War I or II?
World War II, I'm sorry, World War II. That shows my age here. And they anticipated that the casualties, although they were great, were going to be more. So they set up a vast program of education to educate the air crews to make their replacements. And should I go into my resume, my itinerary?
Well, we could follow up on
okay.
We'll get to all of that.
Great, yeah. I hope you're going to edit this.
Yeah. You came out with the rank of in the Air Force, the highest rank?
I was a second lieutenant. I was a bombardier.
Okay.
Second lieutenant in the Air Force.
And what does a bombardier do?
The bombardier is the fellow who sits in the nose of the plane, and if you want to take a quick clip of this, quick shot of this, he sits in the nose of the plane. This is a B-17. Getting it? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a B-17, and the bombardier sits in the very front in this big plexiglass dome. He can see the whole world in front of him. It was a great spot. And as you will remember from seeing the old newsreels, these hundreds and hundreds of planes flying together over the air in Europe. The bombardier, as the pilot would lead the plane over the target, the bombardier would sit in the nose of the plane and use the Sperry Norden bomb sight, which is a top secret thing for World War II. And this was an analog computer, actually. Very precisely done, plenty of gears and cams inside, and would, by manipulating the controls, which you can just barely see on this side, by manipulating controls would regulate the speed and direction of the plane so that they would drop the bombs on the target.
Okay. How were you able not to go overseas? How did that come about?
Well, I was part of the replacements, and I was in a total of 10 different posts during my time in the service. And as I came through each one, 2 or 3 months after I left, they closed them up. So I was in the tail end of the replacements, and which happened to me. Actually, I was supposed to, I was finally in B-29s, and I was supposed to ship on September 17th, as I remember, no, September 25th, and VJ Day came on August 7th or something like that.
Yeah.
So, bang, that ended everything.
Yeah. Where did you take basic, Frank?
Okay, that's going to lead to a long question now. I left Newark, New Jersey by train, and we went to Greensboro, South Carolina, and I was in the 1181st Basic Training Detachment. The Air Force Basic Training consisted of 6 weeks, of which we only got 4. In our 4 weeks, we were supposed to have the last 2 weeks out on bivouac. Well, they were anticipating needing replacements, so they gave us credit for that and shipped us out right away. We went from there to the 332nd College Training Detachment in Bristol, Tennessee. Now, I always have to stop when I think of Bristol because the state line ran down the middle of the main street. And one side you could buy beer, and on the other side you couldn't, you know. And one side had the movies, and the other side had the hotels. So we had then considering that all of our people were basically high school graduates. Some hadn't graduated, but basically high school graduated, and they needed a little further education in their mathematics. So we got a smattering of college mathematics, physics, some of the humanities, not that much because we weren't set up for that. And we were there for, and I believe, just about 3 months. 4 months, I guess.
Okay.
We went from there to the, and I forget the exact name, but Nashville, Tennessee was where you went to be tested for your aptitudes to be a pilot or navigator or bombardier. Those were the 3 officers' classes.
Okay.
And the top score was 9, and as I remember, you had to get at least a 7 to pass.
Right.
And I scored 8 in bombardier, 9 in pilot, and 8 in navigator. Well, I thought, great, I'm going to be a pilot. But at that time, they decided they needed bombardiers more, so they made me a bombardier. You know, you didn't have much choice. So from Nashville, Tennessee, we were shipped to Blytheville, Arkansas. And Blytheville, Arkansas was a twin-engine, no, a multi-engine advanced flying field for cadets. No, second lieutenants. We were then called aviation students because we hadn't gone to a cadet school. And in Blytheville, Arkansas, they had twin-engine planes. They had Beechcraft and Curtiss. The Curtiss were an all-metal plane. The Beechcraft, I think, were part fabric. I don't remember them that well. But they were there to teach these newly commissioned lieutenants how to fly a multi-engine plane. So we were there on a flight line. What we were doing was gassing planes up for about 3 months. So anyway, when the time came, we then went to Maxwell Field, Alabama, which was the cadet training school. Maxwell Field was, if you watch any old Air Force movies, you'll see Kelly Field, the west point of the air. Well, Maxwell Field was its companion. So we arrived there, and that was a big difference between being an enlisted man and an officer cadet. And I'll never forget, we got off our train with our barracks bags, and we had 2 barracks bags, A and B bag, and there was a bunch of guys running around with swords. I'm like, what the hell are these guys? Well, it turns out they were the cadet officers. And, okay guys, pick up your bag, come out, let's march. Well, those barracks bags, as you can see from my B4 bag here, were rather awkward. Yeah. And we march and march and march, and pretty soon, you know, they wouldn't stop. So, okay, you're in Maxwell Field now, you're going to do it. All right, so we did. And we got to our barracks. Maxwell Field had 2 classes usually, I don't know what you call them, but 1 month is the beginners, and 2nd month they were the seniors. And each cadet battalion, flight not the flights which is equivalent to a patrol. Anyway, they had cadet officers all the way up to general staff, the command post, who could talk to the colonel on the base on a first name basis almost, except. So all the way down to second lieutenants who were your flight lieutenants, platoon lieutenants. And so we had very nice barracks. There were masonry barracks. As I remember, we had 6 to a room with your own private bath, yeah. And cadet mess, which there it wasn't very good.
It anyway. Sounds like you had extensive training.
Oh,
did you ever have the opportunity to go up in this and test
yeah,
that?
Well, I'm going to go. That's 10 minutes from now.
Okay.
We had further training, further instruction in Maxwell Field, and unfortunately, I don't have a. Oh, okay. I don't know if you can get a tight shot on this. That's me in my cadet uniform, and we were so proud to wear those wings.
Yeah.
Because, well, we were a class apart. Just to mention, a cadet is considered to be higher than an enlisted man, but it hadn't reached an officer. Okay. And we were paid $225 a month, whereas a private only got $50. Our $225, well, that was $150 for pocket money and $75 for meals, and which we never saw, because they took her right out because they gave us the meals. So anyway, in Maxwell Field, we you can see an approximation of what we had by going up to West Point and watching a retreat at West Point, because when you were in lower classes, you had retreat 5 nights a week.
What's retreat?
It's the striking of the colors. Da 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 da. Yeah, the striking of the colors at the end of the day. A big parade of everybody, and when you're in the lower classes, it was 5 nights a week, and the upper classes only had 2, which you look forward. But you get out there, and weather like this today outside, it's supposed to hit 90 degrees. That's all right. You just watch the shirt of the guy in front of you dripping with sweat. So after we graduated from Maxwell Field, we were full-fledged aviation cadets, which I have a cadet patch here showing the wings of the Air Force. And the cadet patch went on your lower right forearm, and the Air Force was on your upper left shoulder. And we were transferred then to Las Vegas, Nevada, which was a very interesting place even in 1944. We took a troop train from Maxwell Field, Alabama, through St. Louis, Missouri, through North Platte, Nebraska, through Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I did set foot in Wyoming, come to think of it, through Salt Lake City and down to Las Vegas. It was, I forgot, it was 4 or 5 days. Mm-hmm. A very interesting trip. They had some Pullmans, and they also had troop carriers, which they made out of freight cars, which had triple bunks on each side. So we got to Las Vegas in, I guess, the middle of, yeah, for sure. Got to Las Vegas around June 1944. Oh, I'll back up. When I was in Maxwell Field, Alabama, they had loudspeakers in every barracks because they would fall out for parade or for classes or whatever, announcements. And one morning we were waken up by the sound of a newscaster. What the heck is this? It was D-Day. Mm. And it was very emotional even then. But anyway.
What was D-Day, Frank?
D-Day, June 6, 1944.
What did it represent?
Oh, the invasion of Europe.
Okay.
And we understood that this was going to happen because they would make sure every week to bring us in for an orientation on the news. They would have looked like a big ready room, which you sometimes see in about an army headquarters. And one wall was completely covered with a map of Europe. It was cut off at about Poland, but all the way down to Spain, and they would show us. At that time, they didn't have anything to show, but they would show us that here is where Omaha Beach is, and where the guys are invading, and so forth. And so they kept us pretty much up to date. We knew what was going on. So, as I say, after we left that, we wound up in Las Vegas, Nevada, and even then it was a great place. Although at that time there were only 2 hotels on the Strip: the Last Frontier and El Rancho Vegas. They had both been torn down a long time ago. But downtown was still downtown. Mm-hmm. I haven't been there for 60 years, 65 almost. I should go back and find out what the difference is. But in Las Vegas, we'd go in town every weekend, and I would go in, gamble very conservatively, make enough money for dinner and a taxi fare, and come back. Mm-hmm. Well, when we left Las Vegas, oh, by the way, the food there was excellent. I don't know who was in charge of the mess, but they used, apparently who they had was perhaps a chef from a hotel in Los Angeles or something like that, and they would.
This was a base mess hall?
Yeah, well, this is cadet mess.
Cadet, okay.
See, we were cadets then,
right?
And as I say, we're halfway between officers and enlisted men.
Okay.
And so they would even 8:30, 9 o'clock at night put out a spread of cold stuff. If you want anything extra, fine, come and get it. Yeah. So we got out $75 worth for each month. So when we left, just before we left Las Vegas, they took us into El Rancho Vegas, and our cadet group had dinner there, which was paid for out of our mess fund. Yeah. I have the picture if you want to show it.
Maybe in a little while.
Okay.
Are you leading us up to the Bombardier?
So from there I went to Kirtland Field in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And New Mexico, at the train station, there was an elevation point which said, this here is 1 mile high. So we were quite elevated. That was Bombardier School. In Bombardier School, you get to do the actual physical things that a bombardier did. I remember when we first got to the training area. It was inside a hangar, and this gadget, I don't know what they're called, this was, if you're familiar with these painting scaffolds made out of pipe that go up 2 or 3 stories, yeah. It's about 2 stories high on wheels, and you'd go up on top, and you'd be in the same general stance as the bombardier, and they would set what they called a bug, a little thing about a wheeled vehicle about this big with a target on top. And it would come across, and you would go forward. This is very slowly, but it's simulating being up maybe 20,000, 30,000 feet. And this bug would come across very slowly, and you had to guide by using the bombardier's bomb sight. You had to guide it over to hit the bug and hit the center of the target. And it wasn't that easy. Mm-hmm. But before that, you had to compute. Yeah. You had to compute your sheets to say that, okay, you're at 15,000 feet, you're going 180 miles an hour, you got a crosswind of so-and-so, and you had to do your own computations. And this is an E6B computer. Wow. A computer. from the Air Force, and it's also on the front. You would draw lines showing where your track was going. The airport was going. These green lines, if you can see them, showed where the wind was going. So you'd pick your wind and do it on one side or the other. And as they say, you would have your sheet filled out, which I've got here, and then draw on this what you were going to do. And meanwhile, the back is a circular slide rule. And so you'd be able to do your computations very quickly.
Right.
And I don't know who invented it, but boy, it's quite a gadget. This does what everybody thinks a computer can do today, which a computer does.
Yeah.
But here, you are doing it. You are working hand in glove with it.
Yeah.
So,
did you keep in touch with the fellow officers through the years, Frank?
beg pardon?
Have you kept in touch with fellow officers through the years?
No, unfortunately. My best friend, who was with me in Albuquerque, he did stop in to see me once a few years after, but I was never great on writing letters. So unfortunately, we used to send Christmas cards, but after a while, after 8 or 10 years, when my wife started taking over Christmas cards, I kind of died out.
Yeah.
So I really haven't got had any computation with any of them, any connections with any of them. When we were in Kirtland Field in Albuquerque, we had a Chinese cadet flight with us, platoon. And they were nationalist Chinese, of course. And they get out there, and, you know, I was listening. Tsuchi watso, chibu tso. I learned my Chinese commands. Tsuchi watso means attention, chibu tso is right face,
Right.
and then they take off, you know.
Yeah.
And at that time, I befriended a couple of Chinese cadets, and I got one of them some books in English because they were trying to learn English more and so forth and so on. So after we left, after we completed the Bombardier School in New Mexico, you were allowed 230 feet deviation from the center of the target, and as long as your total score was within that 230 feet, you know you were going to graduate.
Yeah.
So I graduated on January 27th, 1945, class 45 4B of bombardiers.
Mm-hmm.
45, I guess that's what the B is. And we then had a 10-day delay en route, so we all went home. A delay en route is like a leave, only it doesn't count it. So I went home, and there was no one around. No one in high school. Fortunately, my girl was. But she, of course, me being a lieutenant and she being, I guess, newly graduated from high school, oh man, I mean.
You looked like that in the uniform about that time?
You know, this was taken away a little bit, just a couple months after.
Yeah.
But then we went from, we were sent to Omaha, Nebraska for further training. So I was sent to B-29 Gunnery School in Buckingham Field in Fort Myers, Florida. And this was taken in Fort Myers, Florida. This is in my days of my misspent youth. We
Did that girl from high school eventually become Mrs. Gluckler?
No, unfortunately. I was very, very broken up after it happened, but it was one of those things. Yeah. And it turned out that while I was still going with her, well, that's the end of the story. In Buckingham Field, we were in B-29 gunnery. We were assigned to B-29s. And although we had been in B-17s in the previous gunnery, because that was Europe, now we were going to the Pacific,
Yeah.
and the B-29 gunners were in B-24 airplanes. I have some film clips home, movies home, but I haven't looked for them for years. Anyway, they changed the interior of part of the B-24 to appear to be a B-29. You would have to crawl through to the front a little differently. And
Was
so
the B-29 much bigger than the B-24?
Oh, about twice as big.
Okay.
The wingspan was about twice. B-24 is a twin-tail, 4-engine bomber. The B-29, of course, was a 4-engine bomber, but the B-24 and the B-17, they both started out, I think, with 750 horsepower engines, went up to 1,000. I think by the time I flew in them, they were 1,250 horsepower engines. The B-29 had 2,000 horsepower engines. They were made in Woodridge, New Jersey, Bergen County. So we would fly over Florida. Well, flying over Florida, and this was the summer, towards the end of summer in 1945. And Florida was either burning or it was raining. Because those Everglades, my brother at that time was stationed in Stuart, Florida, and I would take the bus across from Fort Myers to Stuart. It was a 4-hour drive in a converted automobile carrier. They converted the trailer to a bus, and there I was.
Yeah.
So we finished there, and by then the end of the war was rapidly approaching, and they really didn't know what to do with us because, you know, anyway, so I was sent to Tampa, to MacDill Field, Tampa, which I think still exists.
Well, did you have a 2-year or 3-year enlistment?
It's a term of service, 6 months, hostilities plus 6 months, something like that, yeah. It was World War II, you know.
Yeah.
So we were sent to Tampa, and I was the adjutant of I really don't know what those guys did. They mostly cleaned up. But everybody in the Air Force was drifting downwards toward the end because nobody was doing much. And I finally got discharged from Tampa in 1945. I left there the end of October somewhere, and I got home actually before my date of termination on November 2nd.
What did you do after the service?
It's funny. I was riding through town, and I remember my mother was driving through Hackensack, and we were going along. I saw a surveyor on the side of the road that I just happened to know, and I hopped on and I said, "Hey, you need a good man?" He says, "Yeah." So I started work almost immediately within the first week as a land surveyor, and I've been a land surveyor ever since.
How many years is that?
Oh, I got my land surveyor's license in 1949, so that's
60-something years?
70, no, 60, 64 years,
Yeah.
60, 62 years, yeah.
We moved to Hillsdale in 1970, and looking at my title, your name is on it.
Oh, yeah, well, I've surveyed all around Bergen, northern New Jersey, Bergen, Essex, Passaic, and Hudson County, and the rest of North New Jersey.
Frank, one question. From what you learned in the service, relate to being a surveyor?
In a sense, yes, because when it comes to computations, mathematics, and you know, the good old E6B, it's all related because it's all angles and distances, and of course we don't have to think about rate of speed anymore. But it all does have a relationship, you know.
Okay.
And then when I got discharged, my buddy, my best friend, who turned out to be my best man, he got discharged, I think, in early January. So it was, I think, February. I said to him, you know, we should really go join the American Legion. And so we did. We went down to the Post 55 in Hackensack, Captain Harry B. Remus Post, and joined. And they had so many guys, I remember. They had at least 100, at least 10 by 10, that came and got sworn in for the Legion. And meanwhile, my girlfriend was in a process of breaking up. I mean, we stayed friends, but she didn't want to be that close anymore. So I lived in the upper part of Hackensack, near the Hackensack Hospital. And I was 4 blocks from Essex Street. And I'm walking down to the corner one day, and I look up the side street, and there's a girl I vaguely knew from high school. And she was 300, 400, 500 feet away from it. I just kept on walking. And I'm walking along. Pretty soon, somebody comes running after me. Frank, oh, hi, good to see you. So she says to me, like that, you want to be an usher at my wedding? No, first she said, you were an officer in the Air Force? Yeah. She said, you want to be an usher at my wedding? Why not? Here I wasn't 21 yet, and it's an opportunity. So I went into the church and did rehearsal Friday night before, and in walks this very attractive, dark hair, light-skinned girl, and she looked all right, yeah. And so at the wedding, she was a bridesmaid, and her sister was a bridesmaid. So at the reception, naturally, I got the telephone number, and I figured, well, whoever answers the phone, I'll ask out. She was the one who answered. So one thing led to another, and we finally got married.
Yeah.
So.
How many years were you married?
51 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She passed away 10 years ago, and the one thing I've been grateful for is that the fire department has been even more than a legion for me. The fire department is a family. You fight with each other, you fight for each other. And I've been very active in the fire department in the past 10 years.
Is that the Hillsdale Fire Department?
Yeah, Hillsdale Fire Department. And active on a state level right now. It gives me something to do so you don't dwell on the memories. Because when you do, you start to fill up.
Yeah. I know that American Legion Hillsdale, Post 162, recently had the honor of presenting you with a continuous membership certificate. How many years?
65 years. Well, when I first joined Hillsdale, I stayed with Hackensack until the mid-60s somewhere. Bill Warrenby was commander when I shifted to Hillsdale. I was adjutant for a few years, but Hillsdale then was winding down.
Right.
And it isn't until the past 6 or 8 years when a fellow named George, who I happen to be talking to right now, took the bit in his teeth and decided to build membership. And George, you've more than doubled the membership.
Yeah.
And it's only because of hard work and going out and selling. And I got to commend you for that.
Well, thank you. What it really boiled down to was, frankly, our military connection. There's that camaraderie there that is carried over.
I should have said that before, because I found in the fire department what we had in the military: the camaraderie, the esprit de corps, the working together to fight a one enemy. Yeah. Most of the young fellows who are in the service nowadays, this being 2011, when they come out, if they're looking for that old group camaraderie, they'll find it in the volunteer fire department. They really will, and in the paid. In the volunteer more because it's more of a loosely organized. You work there because you want to.
Yeah.
I can't recommend that too much to anybody who might be watching.
Frank, could you kind of sum up your overall feelings about the military service and how it relates to your life after the military?
Well, when I went into service, I made up my mind I was going to have a good time, and I did. There were the fellows who went in that decided they weren't going to have a good time, and they didn't. I traveled over the United States, places I have never been before, and I haven't been since. And I saw how life in the United States is different, even in different sections. I know down in Maxwell Field, Alabama, which is Montgomery, which was the first capital of the Confederacy. in 1942, now 43, remember, it's a lot different than it is today. No television, radio was the only thing.
Right.
And we took our bus through the poorer sections of town to see how some of the poor people lived. We didn't realize it from New Jersey. Even the poor sections up here were not that bad.
Right.
The Great Plains, traveling across Great Plains from Missouri, from St. Louis to North Platte, Nebraska. Well, the Platte River in Nebraska, you know, is supposed to be a mile wide and an inch deep, and it pretty much was. And the flatness of it, and the people in North Platte. In fact, I have a clip on video which I just got a couple of months ago. During the war, mostly all of the troop trains from east to west coast went through North Platte, and the people there in their train station had food all over the place. You know, coffee, buns, sandwiches, whatever. And each troop train would stop there for at least a half an hour, and the guys would go in and for free could get something.
Yeah.
It was great. The people were doing this in the midst of the war, and of course rationing, but they still did it.
Yeah. What are some of these memorabilia that you have here, Frank? What's the significance?
Okay. Various things. Okay, you want to maybe, I think, get all these in one shot. Okay. When I graduated from Albuquerque, Kirtland Field, I got my wings as a bombardier. And these are bombardier wings. Wings with a bomb on the top. If I had gotten to be a navigator, these are navigator's wings. I wasn't authorized for any of these, but I just accumulated them over the years. Mm-hmm. These are pilot's wings from World War II. And I had gunner's wings around somewhere, but I don't know what it is. But this is an observer's wings. These were usually the non-flying officers would get those just to have something to wear. Because if you were a newspaper reporter going up and looking at a flood nowadays, well, you'd wear an observer's wings. When you got discharged, you got the ruptured duck. And you would sew that on, you're supposed to sew it on your uniform before you went for home.
There's a lot of history behind that symbol. What's that, the ruptured duck? How did that come about?
I don't know any of the background, I really don't.
Okay.
I should, but I don't. The idea being that once you go home, you wouldn't have any clothes left. And so the guys would be walking around in uniform, and they wanted to make sure that they weren't active duty personnel under Army control. And so you put this on, over here I guess on the left side, and it would show the MPs that you were discharged and you were okay. This is a cadet patch, which was put on the sleeve of the uniform over here. And this is Air Force in general. Now there were, I couldn't find my 50 caliber. This is a link. The 50 caliber shell would fit in here like that, and link. Right. Hundreds of links. This is the armor piercing center of a 50 caliber shell. As I recall, you would have in each string of shells, which would be maybe 500. I think that would one in every 5. Maybe there was more in a year, but you would have out of every 5, you would have maybe 2 armor piercing, 2 what do you call
traces?
Traces, and one I don't know what else, so that you would see where your shells are going. But you couldn't, when you're shooting in the air, you shouldn't use that to tell where you're going. That was good for the pilots maybe who were coming in. Okay, I'll go into aerial gunnery. Okay, as you're going along in your plane, the the enemy plane had to follow what they call a pursuit curve. The pursuit curve takes would have to come on a definite mathematical curve so that his shells would get to where your plane is by the time you got there. And he would come in from the side like this, and actually, as my hand banks, come in and come alongside and be shooting at you all the time. Well, meanwhile, the fellow who's inside the plane would be shooting back at him. Well, of course, the fellow inside the plane didn't have a computerized gun sight, so you had to use your head. So the gun sight was you see all the time in the movies, they have a big green gun sight in the back and a post in front.
With a cross.
That don't work anymore. Actually, the rig should be in the front. And by then, the gunners had enough training so that they wouldn't even need that. They would, if you're shooting at the guy out there, you would shift over the gun. You wouldn't look down the length of the gun, you'd be shifting, so you would be shooting where he is. And as he got in closer, you'd be coming in closer until he was going forward, and you'd be. It's called a 3-red sight.
Yeah.
Red from radian, I guess. And we had obviously extensive training in it. And every gunner on the ship knew how to use the guns in any other position.
Right.
Because even though your position was waist gunner maybe by the open window or a bombardier in front, as you went through training with your own crew, you would show the other guys how to do it, because in case if you were in front and got hit, you want somebody to be there to protect the front of the plane so you got home.
Right.
So I could go on and on for some of the things.
Frank, would you want to make a comment about military service in general relative to the young people?
I think our latest generation is finding out they're volunteering. The volunteer service that we have today is presumpted on educated soldiers, because the technical end of the military has grown so much, and so they don't need uneducated soldiers. It's one of the best things I could ever recommend for a young person. It's if you're like when you graduate from high school, even when you graduate from college, you're not even sure what you want to do. If you go in the military for a few years, you will learn so much of life. You will travel. You won't have much control where you travel, but you will travel. You'll see how the other half of the world is.
As one veteran to another, thank you for your service.
Okay. Thank you.